Alrighty here. So welcome everyone to our Employee Wellness, Cancer Prevention, and Self-Care webinar sponsored by UVM Medical Center Employee Wellness. My name is Greg Lemoy, and I'm a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach with the Employee Wellness Program here at the UVM Medical Center. I'd also like to welcome all UVM Health Network affiliates to our webinar tonight. Our topic tonight is building a healthier self-care routine. I'm very excited to introduce Jolene Hart. So Jolene is a health coach certified by the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, certified in oncology nutrition, and the founder of the pioneering beauty coaching practice, Beauty is Wellness. Jolene has served for nearly a decade as the beauty advisor for the National Breast and Ovarian Cancer nonprofit, Unite for Her. She oversees personal care product education. She's also the best-selling author of 5 books on nutrition, beauty, and wellness. At the heart of Jolene's work is her desire to empower her readers and clients with knowledge of their own ability to shape their lifelong beauty and health with simple tools and habits. Her private coaching looks at many areas of life, from stress and hormones to diet, digestion, and healthy personal care products to help others look and feel their best from the inside. So just a couple of quick notes. Our live Zoom session is going to be recorded right now and will be available for distribution once the event's over. Additionally, we'll have some time towards the end of our session to ask Jolene questions. There are a couple options for that via the Zoom webinar. Please feel free to use the Q&A function, or you can use the chat box itself. That being said, you don't have to wait until the end of the webinar to ask your questions, so please do feel free to ask them as they come up, and I will go ahead and we'll sort through those at the end. Again, welcome everyone, and without further ado, we'll get started.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that great introduction, Greg. So I began my career in the beauty industry working in conventional beauty as a beauty editor at a magazine, and took a diversion only after a few years because I was really interested in this topic and the topic of healthier self-care, healthier personal care. And back then, which was 13 years ago, it was a very much a burgeoning topic. So there was not a lot of information. And the information, the research, and really the grassroots mobilization of resources around looking at what's in our personal care has just exploded over the last decade plus. So I'm so excited to present some of that information to you tonight. As members of the medical community, you know personally how vital self-care is, not only to the healing and the well-being of those that you treat, but also for your personal ability to provide care and support. You know, you've heard that saying that you need to fill your cup first, and your self-care practices are that foundation. They have that filling up potential, and they are just so important. So when it comes to personal care products, you've probably heard the terms clean beauty or green beauty. I'm actually not such a fan of either term. I prefer just to use the term healthy beauty, because at the end of the day, all that matters is the effect of that product on our health, not whether it meets someone's standards for clean or green. There are so many different standards out there. I really want to look at the bottom line. Is this something that is going to be health supporting for us? That being said, there is quite a lot of junk food personal care out there, just as there are a lot of junk foods in our grocery store. And it's really your choice of what you're feeding your body, because you actually are feeding your body through that very permeable layer we call the skin barrier. And just as, you know, junk food manufacturers would argue that they have every right to be on our store shelves because shoppers can make their own choices about what to put in their body, many manufacturers of beauty products with concerning ingredients would say that their products don't present a risk because the evidence around the effects maybe is not clear or firm enough. The dose in their products might be low, but again, that comes down to your choice. And there are so many places in our world where it pays dividends to be an informed and an empowered shopper. And I really think nowhere more than the beauty and personal care aisle. So one of my goals tonight is to make you a more educated and empowered shopper around your personal care products. So let me share my slides and we'll get started. There we go. So building a healthier self-care routine. My goals for tonight are, number one, to reflect on the essential role of self-care in a healthy and balanced life. Working in healthcare, you absolutely know how vital this is. I'd like for you to learn the therapeutic benefits of personal care and grooming, which are far beyond the visible and image-related effects. We're going to examine evidence around particular ingredients of concern that commonly appear in our personal care products. And you're going to take away information and resources to become a more educated, empowered shopper in the personal care aisle. So I want to start with a quote. This is from my book, Ignite Your Light, and I think it speaks volumes about the concept of self-care. Working in beauty for the last 15 years, sometimes this idea gets really trivialized, like beauty is all about pedicures and bubble baths. There is real, true healing potential in being able to shift yourself out of having a difficult day or difficult experience to make yourself feel good, to have that power of touch, which we'll talk about ahead. But basically, this quote says, when you take part in experiences that bring you joy, you change your brain and you change your biology. And you really do help to, through neuroplasticity, create those new pathways of positivity, of joy, of well-being. And every time that you have those feelings, you really sink into those feelings of well-being. You are slowing the aging process. You're lowering your stress hormones. You're changing your biology. So there's true power here that maybe we skip over or we trivialize when we think about something like self-care or beauty. So this quote we start out with from Southern New Hampshire University: engaging in a self-care routine has been clinically proven to reduce or eliminate anxiety and depression, to reduce stress, actually improve our concentration, minimize frustration and anger, increase our happiness, and improve our energy. I'm sure you felt one, if not all of those, when you've given yourself the time to really have some regular self-care practices. Broadly speaking, self-care is just looking after your own health. It can be any number of practices, and it's obviously the more regularly you do this, you're going to benefit your immune system, your longevity, healing if you need that. Your sleep will benefit, your productivity, your happiness. And these practices, they help us to feel cared for. In doing that, as I mentioned, they strengthen those neural pathways of positivity, of joy. And when we do that, we release neurotransmitters that calm our stress response and lift our moods. And so many of us are seeking something in our lives that is going to do just that, right? So is going to lift our mood and help us to feel less stress. And we have this easy source of power right here in our self-care practices. Beyond that, I really see as a health coach, self-care builds your self-connection, it builds your intuition, and it builds your ability to recognize what you need as a human being, to wake up and say, what does my body need today? Maybe it's different than yesterday and different than what I will need tomorrow, but being able to ask yourself and to really reflect on how your body feels today, that I think really comes as an effect of regular self-care. Also, your body needs to be in a relaxed state to heal and to thrive. So for any of your patients who are going through a healing journey, they're working through chronic illness or a particular illness, being able to get into a relaxed state and to feel that power of self-care is essential. That parasympathetic state is where we ideally want to be for 80% of our day, right? And so many of us are being triggered into our sympathetic nervous system, fight and flight all day long. Regular self-care practices reduce heart disease, stroke, cancer. And what my book, Ignite Your Light, is all about is that energy shift that you get from your self-care rituals. You might be having a very difficult day, going through a difficult health experience. Maybe you interacted with someone that has left you feeling down or depressed. You have the ability to change that pattern, to pivot. And self-care is one of the most powerful ways to do that. So more self-care benefits. Some of these are, very specific. Some are more broad. A little quote from the American Psychological Association, and this is in reflection over the last 2 years. Self-care has never been more important. I think we've all felt and seen that. Regular self-care practice can lower our inflammatory cytokines and increase our lymphocytes, and that's going to benefit our immune system. It can slow the aging process as it reduces stress in the body. And this is cumulative. The more that you can lower your cortisol, lower your adrenaline, get your body into that parasympathetic place and activate those systems of your body, the more you are going to slow that wear and tear on your body in the aging process. You're going to increase your happiness neurotransmitters. And as you do, you are reprogramming those pathways of your brain, rewiring your brain toward resilience, toward happiness, perhaps even toward positivity. I also feel that self-care puts you back in control of the narrative of your day, of maybe some experience that has been done to you. Instead, you get to turn around and say, well, what can I do for myself to take myself from this place to a place where I want to be? I think it's a healthy way to release energy that we pick up over the course of the day in our interactions, in the news stories that we hear, in the stress that we carry. So many of my health coaching clients default toward what I would call unhealthy release practices. So coming home and binging on streaming television, or drinking to feel relaxed, or extra amounts of sweets and junk foods to have that release at the end of the day. Self-care practices can step in and be a healthy and beneficial way to release some of that stored tension and energy. And I think it's so important in that space. And finally, I love the concept of resilience as being one of the big ways that self-care impacts us. So again and again, resilience is named as having a profound influence on the way we age. So some of the people that live the longest and are the happiest into old age are those who are resilient. I think resilience is fundamentally rooted in that personal energy, and it comes back to our ability to pivot from what we're feeling and introduce that self-care practice and get ourselves to where we want to be to boost our resilience. In that space, I think it's just so important. So let's talk about beauty and grooming as self-care. Obviously, self-care can be any number of a spectrum of things. Tonight, we're going to focus a lot on beauty and grooming and personal care, how important it is, but also some of the downsides and the concerns. So again, far more than just bubble baths and pedicures. We know that number one, you absorb many of the ingredients that you apply. There's not a specific number tied to how much that you absorb. Some people will quote, 60% of what you apply to your skin. We don't know exactly how much of the ingredients that you apply absorb into your body, but we do know that many of them end up in your bloodstream, and they do so very quickly. Personal care, again, is tied to that resilience, the joy, healing, and self-esteem. It comes with an opportunity to touch your body, to present your best self, to even use something like aromatherapy as a pick-me-up, and just have that feeling that you are being cared for or that you're taking care of yourself. So more on the power of touch. There are such established emotional, mental, and physical benefits of touch. And this could be self-touch or someone else, such as giving a massage, getting a hug. Touch increases our serotonin, our oxytocin, and our dopamine. And those three are powerful neurotransmitters that offset our feelings of anxiety. They improve our immune function, which is no small benefit. They can lower blood pressure and cortisol, significantly reduce anxiety. Touch can relax our breathing, calm our nervous system, and slow our heart rate. So just that power of connecting with someone, and this also includes self-touch. So a very recent study, 2021, shows that the benefits of self-touch can be just as powerful in lowering cortisol and stress reactivity as the benefits of touch from others. So to me, at the end of the day, that is, taking that extra time to do a wonderful face massage. Maybe it's even, a foot massage or some way of connecting and touching your skin really does give that feedback to your body that you're being cared for. Self-touch increases your delta brain waves, which relax the nervous system. They increase our neurotransmitters like GABA, serotonin, and oxytocin. We do know that therapy like tapping is established for reducing depression and anxiety. Self-touch works in a similar way because you're activating those nerve endings. Your body is feeling the touch. So it's going to be a similar pattern. Along with that facial massage that I mentioned, even something like light touch on your lips, and you do this when you apply lip balm with your fingers, is a trigger for your parasympathetic nervous system. It tells your body that you are well, that you're relaxed, and it's a nice trigger that you can actually activate wherever you are. that the dermis, the middle layer of our skin, has nerve receptors called C-tactile afferents that respond to gentle touch. So we're not so much talking about, deep tissue massage. We're actually talking about gentle strokes, gentle cleansing, and that can be the most effective and the most beneficial. The bottom line here, though, is that any time that you lower your levels of stress hormones, you're slowing that wear and tear on your body. So really for you, you can figure out what is the type of self-care that works best for you. Is it touch? Is it going to be something else? Either way, it slows that wear and tear, and that becomes so beneficial cumulatively in your life. Now, the downside of personal care products, of course, if we have that self-touch, if we have our beauty and grooming routine, there are going to be products involved. And like many of the ingredients in our foods, as I mentioned, a lot of the personal care product ingredients we apply and inhale are readily absorbed, and they influence key aspects of our health, hormones and inflammation being two that really stick out to me. The average woman uses about 12 personal care products daily. Usually women fall somewhere between 5 and 30 products. So you might be someone who's on the higher end. Maybe you have a full grooming routine, or maybe you are a little minimalist and you just do a few. Either way, it's an average of 168 different ingredients that you're exposed to each day. The average teen girl is far more, 17 products. Men use an average of 6, and those products contain about 85 ingredients. So even if you think, beauty, grooming, not so much for me, not a makeup user, you're still using shampoo, you're using body soap, hand soap, toothpaste, you're probably using scented products in your environment. So all of those have the exposures that we're talking about here. So personal care products account for more regular and repeated ingredient exposures than the majority of all other consumer products. So if you really think about it, these are products that you're using intimately, you're applying to your skin, you're inhaling them, they're absorbing right into your bloodstream, or you're breathing them in. So this exposure is very close contact for your body. And beyond, us buying products and using them in our homes, that long-term repeated exposure is a major health concern for industry workers. So we're talking about our nail technicians, our hairstylists, estheticians who care for our skin. These professionals are exposed to these ingredients repeatedly, hour after hour, day after day, and their risks are certainly higher. Now, ingredient testing, which, as I mentioned, a lot more has been done over the last decade, still often fails to account for mixtures. And that is the synergistic effect caused by ingredient interactions. So tonight we'll talk a lot about specific ingredients and the concerns around specific ingredients. The next frontier, what we'll be talking about in 5 years or so, is going to be, what are these mixtures really doing? And this is when certain ingredients combine together, they have a different and sometimes a larger effect on our systems. Fragrance is one of those ingredients of concern, and right now fragrance is still classified as a trade secret. So when you look at the back of your personal care products, you will see the word fragrance, you'll see the word perfume, but underneath that one word can be hundreds of different ingredients that are in that trade secret fragrance formula. So one of the major legislation that's trying to be passed right now is to reveal what are those ingredients that go into fragrances, so we can see better some of the ingredient exposures that we're actually getting in the fragrances in our products. So this is a New York Times quote that summarizes really, what is going on behind the scenes in our US beauty industry. Why can we not just trust whatever is on our shelves is going to be the best choice for our bodies? In the same way that we have junk food on our shelves, we have junk food beauty. The federal law that regulates cosmetic safety, which is more than 75 years old, it's very outdated, does not require companies to share safety information with the FDA. The law bans ingredients harmful to users, but it contains no provisions for the agency to evaluate the effects of the chemicals before they are put on shelves. And that is the issue, that we are getting the exposures, we're finding out years later that there was an issue. And at that point, I don't want to say it's too late, but the damage has been done. So I would say, as we all want to be empowered and smarter shoppers, I think, my approach is always to be more cautious and to look ahead and think, well, what are the ingredients of concern? What should I maybe be avoiding now that could be a larger risk? So category by category, here are a couple that I get asked about often, maybe that you've heard buzz about. Should you be concerned about this and that? Deodorant is one of the top products that I get asked about. And obviously deodorant is going to go in that sensitive area under your arms, near your breasts if you're a woman. The top concerning ingredient in antiperspirant deodorants is aluminum. So what is the concern around aluminum? Aluminum works to block sweat. Now there's currently no evidence that aluminum affects breast cancer development. However, there is evidence that aluminum in the body affects the endocrine system. And it does so by changing how the body produces or responds to estrogen. So is it a direct, and usually this is how it's going to be. There's not a direct causality between a particular ingredient and cancer development, but there is stress or effects on a particular system of the body, usually the endocrine system. So that's the concern with aluminum in deodorant. Feminine care, so our conventional feminine care products, often made with synthetic materials, and there's lots of endocrine disrupting compounds in these products, including pesticides, plasticizers, and fragrances. The other issue here is that they are placed in a highly absorbable vaginal area. This tissue is very absorbable, so we want to be looking very closely at what we're putting in that area. Nail polish, I get asked about this one, and surprisingly, nail polish, the nail polish industry has really cleaned up its act over the last decade. Nail polish is commonly one of the very first beauty products that young women are exposed to. Historically, they contained some of the absolute worst and most toxic beauty ingredients. Maybe not a surprise, just based on how they smell. From phthalates to formaldehyde, toluene, which we'll talk about some of these ahead. Today, the majority of nail polish manufacturers have removed the most toxic ingredients. And this is really based on a lot of the grassroots consumer demands around wanting to know what's in a product and saying we're not comfortable with that being on our bodies every day. You will often note this on product packaging now. You'll see the terms 3 free, 4 free. This means that the 3 or 4 or whatever number of the most toxic ingredients have been removed from that product. Of course, though, the safety of nail products still varies very much by brand. Hair dye and relaxers are another big category of concern. So there's a documented relationship between hair relaxers and increased risk of breast cancer. And unfortunately, which we'll talk about ahead, much of this falls on women of color who traditionally use these products in their hair routine. Also, there are over 5,000 different chemicals in hair dye products, some of which are reported to be carcinogenic in animals. So we have a link there. Is the evidence going to be completely clear? No, but we have enough of a link that many women will say, okay, I'm not comfortable using this all over my body for a long time and having it be something that, sinks into my scalp, and they want to use it less. So that's another choice that you have with that product. So this is a little quote from the President's Cancer Panel report from 12 years ago. And this, I think, really speaks to my own perspective on personal care. A precautionary, prevention-oriented approach should replace current reactionary approaches to environmental contaminants, in which human harm must be proven before action is taken to reduce or eliminate exposure. This approach should be the cornerstone of a new national cancer prevention strategy that emphasizes primary prevention. And that's really what I think this presentation is all about, is looking at the areas where we can minimize our risk and prevent unnecessary exposure when there are other options that will perform just as well, and eliminate some of our risk, as we are exposed to so many different concerning ingredients all throughout our day, in our air and our water and our food. It's not just our personal care. Now, the other side of this, which you may still hear from lots of different personal care product companies out there, is that this is fear mongering, that we should not have to worry about the products on our shelves, that there's no reason to be concerned. There's no evidence behind some of these concerns. So you will definitely hear both sides of the story. And as a consumer, again, it's up to you to choose the products and the ingredients that you feel comfortable putting on your body. So what's been done so far in cosmetic safety? I mentioned, that law around cosmetic safety is about 75 years old. This law is from 1938. The FDA passed the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in 1938. Since then, the US has banned or partially banned 30 ingredients for use in personal care products. Now, to put that into perspective, the European Union has banned more than 1,600. So we are certainly lagging behind. Now, California is doing its best to sort of lead the charge. California has passed the Toxic Free Cosmetics Act that banned 24 chemicals from sale in California. And as they did so, it was noted in those proceedings that the majority of those banned ingredients have links to breast cancer. The Personal Care Products Safety Act, which is bipartisan legislation from Feinstein and Collins, was introduced a few times. It hasn't made much progress. Now we're really putting our power behind the Safer Beauty Bill package, which was introduced in Congress last year. And this package includes 4 different acts that will ban 12 of the most toxic chemicals, create safety protection for salon workers, establish a grants program to put research into green chemistry alternatives, specifically for products marketed to women of color, which is such an area of concern. This will also require disclosure of fragrance and flavor ingredients, which are now not disclosed under that fragrance trade secret rule. And it will ensure supply chain transparency. So if a company is sourcing a particular ingredient, they have the right to know the full picture of what is in that ingredient. Are there preservatives? Are there fragrances? Are there things in there that are hidden? We need transparency so everybody can understand what is in the end result that is getting to us, the consumer. And now I'll share, just my top 5 personal care ingredients to avoid. This list has not changed much over the last 5 to 7 years. These ingredients are still the big ones. Some of them show up less now, but they are still an issue. And the evidence around these 5 ingredients really continues to mount. If 10 years ago, we were not quite sure that parabens were something to avoid, we know now without a doubt that they are endocrine disruptors. The evidence continues to build. And fortunately, a lot of products and companies have removed this particular ingredient, but there are a few ahead that you will find more often. So parabens, they're widely used preservatives. They show up in a range of personal care products. It's very common to use multiple parabens together to preserve a product. And there has been ubiquitous detection of parabens from our blood and urine samples. All humans have been exposed to parabens at this point. It may be next to impossible to find, someone who doesn't have the exposure, because we literally had decades of parabens being in every product that we used. Parabens have demonstrated estrogenic effects in the body. So exposure to external estrogens like parabens can increase the risk of breast cancer and cell abnormalities, and increase the expression of genes linked to breast cancer. There's strong evidence that paraben exposure was associated with decreased serum sex steroid hormone levels and decreased fertility in women. So this is another question around the endocrine disruptors. What are they doing to our hormonal systems, to our fertility? And in this case, there are effects for both males and females, and we'll look at the effects on males ahead. A study looking at the effect of very low doses of parabens, and that's really important because a lot of companies will say, oh, the dose is so low, this is not really something that matters. This study from the Silent Spring Institute looked at very low doses of parabens on HER2-positive breast cancer cells and found that parabens turned on estrogen receptors and significantly sped up the rate of tumor growth. And that's really important there. Paraben use can lead to faster, more aggressive tumor growth and the formation of malignant cancer. And that's according to the Silent Spring Institute. And I should note at the end of this presentation, you'll receive a QR code that will take you to the research, and all of these studies are linked in the research and the resources. So you'll be able to look up all of these and use them if you need. You'll typically find parabens toward the end of an ingredient list. They are used usually in small amounts, but as we noted, they still make a difference. And at this point, there are many safer preservatives that companies can use in place of parabens. Obviously, you need a preservative in a product, that's unquestionable. Some of the safer preservatives you can look for: Leuconostoc, which is also called radish root ferment, lactobacilli ferment, L-ascorbic acid, D-alpha tocopherol. These are ones that you may see and you can say, oh, yes, this has a preservative in it. It's not a paraben, and I can feel more comfortable with that choice. The second personal care product to avoid is a category of ingredients called phthalates. And most often in beauty products, you will see this under the term fragrance, perfume, or parfum. You may also see DBP, dibutyl phthalate, which is used sometimes in nail polish and other products. These are endocrine disrupting ingredients that have been linked to a wide range of health issues. And the studies continue to roll in on phthalates. So we're talking autoimmune conditions, birth defects, reproductive health issues, even asthma. Not only in personal care products, they're used extensively in plastics. A 2022 study found a positive association between phthalate exposure, and breast cancer incidence. And another recent study suggests that the exposure to phthalates in childhood could be linked to a roughly 20% higher risk of cancer among children. Yet another recent study, as I said, they continue to roll in, found that people with the highest levels of phthalates in their bodies have a 49% greater risk of death from health issues over 10 years. About 75% of American adults have detectable levels of phthalates in their urine on any given day. I'm actually surprised it's that low, given that phthalates are really ubiquitous in our products. There's links here between phthalates and subfertility. And as the quote that is here about reproductive and developmental toxicity or toxicology mentions that because they are not covalently bonded, these phthalates leach from plastics into our foods, our beverages, certainly our personal care products. With age, with use, as packaging breaks down, with UV light exposure, and that makes them more hazardous for our health. We may end up ingesting them, inhaling them, absorbing them through our skin. And exposure of children to phthalates has found to be 2 to 4 times higher than adults. The big issue of concern here is that there is really a window of time where exposure to phthalates makes a much bigger difference. And that tends to be in those years when you are, your body is developing, when you have those hormonal shifts during puberty and pregnancy. So we don't want children to have a 2 to 4 times higher exposure. We want that to be much lower. In cosmetics, phthalates often show up as an undisclosed ingredient. So you might be the best at turning around your products and reading the ingredients, but you will rarely see the word phthalate. You will see fragrance. And fragrance, when you see it on a label, you should assume that's synthetic, unless a company would say fragrance from natural sources. Or if they say phthalate-free fragrance, then you can say, okay, it may be synthetic, but there's no phthalates in it. Or you might see no synthetic fragrance on a label. So look for those terms and you can be reassured that there are not going to be phthalates in the fragrance in your product. And then I mentioned nail polish. That's another common source of phthalate exposure. So it's really helpful to look for phthalate-free nail polishes as well. So this one is a big problem. Definitely one that is far beyond just our personal care products. It's going to be in our plastics and our foods as well. But in the personal care area, if you can look to reduce the fragrances in your home fragrance candles and your products and your lotions and the things that you use on your body, that's a really big step toward reducing your phthalate exposure. Number 3 is a category of formaldehyde releasing chemicals. And we know formaldehyde is an established human carcinogen. This is not up for debate, but you won't see formaldehyde on an ingredient label, just as you won't see phthalates, even though it may be present as a preservative in the product that you're using. So in order to avoid formaldehyde, you have to avoid a category of ingredients called formaldehyde releasers that are actually present in nearly 1 in 5 cosmetics. So it's a little shady here, but these formaldehyde releasers are hidden sources of formaldehyde that when added to water will slowly release that formaldehyde over time as a preservative. So I have the terms here. And it's important to look out for those. I would say they're being used less because, again, of grassroots consumer demand. Number 4 in my top 5 to avoid is triclosan. And this one, you may know, working in healthcare, that the FDA banned the use of triclosan in antibacterial hand soaps in 2017. So it has not appeared in that category of products for a few years, but you will still find it in hand sanitizers, toothpaste, makeup, acne treatments. It's an endocrine disrupting active ingredient used in antibacterial products. It was originally developed as an antibacterial antifungal pesticide. And again, there's strong evidence of triclosan exposure and hormone effects. So that's one that you can easily replace, as regular foaming soap is going to be just as good at getting rid of bacteria and cleaning as products with triclosan. And that was really the reason for the ban, is that there's no evidence that it works any better than soap and water. And finally, it's chemical sunscreen. So this is a really big topic. We all want to use sunscreen, and we should use SPF protection. The question is, what is going to be the safest for our bodies and the healthiest choice? Right now, we know that there are 2 types of sunscreen. So there's a chemical sunscreen and there's a physical sunscreen block. It appears that the physical blocks, the one that actually create a barrier and a layer on your skin because of that mineral effect, are the ones that are safer, as long as they are not in a nano form that can be absorbed into our body. The chemical sunscreens, not named chemical because we should be scared of them or because they're bad, but because they use a chemical reaction to protect us from UV damage, many of these have shown to be endocrine disrupting in our body as well. Oxybenzone is one that is widely used, also suspected to have estrogenic endocrine disrupting effects. And oxybenzone and octinoxate, another one that's used often, have both been banned from sale in Hawaii as of last year due to the documented damage to reefs and ocean life. So we know not only is it affecting our hormones, it's also affecting ocean life. The safest sunscreens appear to be the minerals, zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. The great thing about those ingredients, they're often not as irritating to someone who has more reactive skin. They're good for sensitive skin types, and they also take effect immediately. So you don't need to put them on 15 minutes before you walk outside. You layer them on and they create a physical block and a layer immediately. They're also broad spectrum, so they have a number of benefits beyond appearing to be safer at this point. So now we move into, you have those 5 ingredients to avoid. What is the bigger picture of how these ingredients are affecting us? So unfortunately, we have evidence through the Boston University Black Women's Health Study that there is heightened breast cancer risk for women of color, particularly through the hair products and hair relaxers that they use. Now, there are already existing health disparities in this category. So Black women have a higher death rate from breast cancer than white women. Younger Black women under 50 have double the breast cancer mortality rate of white women. But now we're seeing women who relax their hair regularly face a 30% increased risk of breast cancer. And this hair relaxer use regularly is also linked to early puberty, to heart disease, and endometriosis. Now, heavy use of hair relaxers that contain lye are associated with a more aggressive form of breast cancer. Researchers have also found that parabens increased the growth of Black breast cancer cell lines, but did not affect white breast cancer cell lines at the same dose. So parabens increased the expression of genes linked to breast cancer in the breast cancer cells of both Black and white women. But again, it was the increased growth of Black breast cancer cell lines that really caught their attention. Some studies indicate that Black women have higher exposure to multiple non-persistent endocrine disrupting chemicals than white women. And this might be disputed. Some studies show that There are certain categories of products that are more likely to contain endocrine disruptors. Again, many of them are those hair relaxing and hair maintenance products that perhaps have a higher use in certain demographics. A 2021 study identified personal care product use, diet, and contraceptive use as probable sources of exposure to multiple non-persistent endocrine disrupting chemicals among reproductive age Black women. So where are they getting their exposure? Absolutely, personal care products is a big part of that exposure. We also have the concern about endocrine disruptor exposure for our younger population. So puberty is trending earlier, and I think there have been a lot of studies trying to get to the bottom of what is the root cause of this. It doesn't seem that there is one particular root cause that we can pinpoint, more that it is a collection of factors. And certainly endocrine disrupting chemicals appear to be a big part of that. So an endocrine disruptor is any chemical or mixture of chemicals that interferes with our hormonal action. So we've identified the parabens, phthalates, the oxybenzone, the sunscreen, the triclosan. Those are all suspected or established endocrine disruptors. And the effect that it has on the body is correlated to the timing, not the dose. So a lot of companies will say, oh, but my dose is so small. We're realizing that that's not actually reason to allow it in our products. It's actually the timing during those developmental stages of our bodies that we're most vulnerable to endocrine disruptors, more than worrying about, is the dose large or small? When are we getting that exposure? How young? And there's evidence that we're getting it. If you look a little bit below, newborns have already nearly 300 environmental toxins in their blood at birth. So the evidence is really that we are getting exposed in utero. Emerging research suggests that teens may be particularly sensitive to exposures of trace levels of hormone disrupting chemicals. So again, trace levels, really small amounts. And if you know any teens, you were once a teen, you remember, how many products that you might be playing around with and exposed to, different fragrances that, change your mood, playing around with makeup, playing around with body products and hairstyling products. This is kind of part of that teen experience in many cases, but this is a part and a moment in their lives that they're particularly sensitive to these exposures. Girls exposed before birth to endocrine disrupting ingredients are at a higher risk for early puberty. And researchers at UC Berkeley found that exposure to personal care ingredients, including those phthalates, those parabens, and phenols, have been linked to early puberty in girls. Now, this isn't just, speeding up development. When you have early puberty, you're increasing your risk of breast and ovarian cancer. You're also increasing risk of PCOS, which is a leading cause of infertility. So you're having issues that are maybe going to crop up decades later. And PCOS also has that association with diabetes, obesity, and impaired glucose tolerance, so major health issues. And the final quote on this slide just talks about why, it's a little difficult to understand the full effects of these chemicals, especially because many of them are mixtures. And again, I believe a lot more research will be coming out in the future about what's happening with mixing these endocrine disrupting compounds. So endocrine disruptors in males, this is obviously a big part of the concern as well with our reproductive capacity. Now, phthalate exposure linked to reduced semen quality, poor spermatogenesis, and sperm DNA damage. So those health effects are actually epigenetic, so they continue over generations. And this, again, speaks to why these studies are challenging. We're continuously exposed to a mixture of different chemicals, which is different from many experimental studies that evaluate one particular chemical at a time. It's so hard to really tell what the cumulative effects are, because we're not just being exposed to one ingredient or one chemical at a time. We're using 12 products a day, being exposed to 150 chemicals a day. And exposure starts at the embryonic period or even before. Since paternal exposure to environment and lifestyle factors can change your sperm epigenome. Again, this is something that's going way back to, again, that epigenetic effect. More effects on males, so phthalates again, low testosterone, changing the disruption of genes that regulate cholesterol. So these are systemic effects for sure. Studies have shown that endocrine disrupting chemicals may cause transgenerational effects on reproduction in both males and females. And exposure to these chemicals prenatally or during adult life can negatively impact the reproductive health of not just us, but future generations. So this is a real big one. Males may not use many products and may think, beauty and grooming concerns don't really affect me. It absolutely does when it becomes something that's epigenetic, that is going to affect not only you, but your future generations. So where to start? This presentation is not meant to be in any way fear-mongering. It's meant to be something that is empowering. And if changing your routine feels in any way overwhelming, just start, number one, with the products that you use most often. So think, what are my top 3 products every day? You might think, I use deodorant every day. I'm using hand soap 5 times a day. Look at those few products that you have your most frequent exposures to. If you can change just those few products, you can make a big difference in your exposures. Beyond that, look at what you use over the biggest area of your body. Perhaps every day after you shower, or maybe once a week, you apply lotion head to toe. Think about that surface area and how much of those ingredients are being absorbed into your body and your bloodstream. Maybe you apply foundation over your face every day. That's a big surface area. Can you make sure that that one product is something that has ingredients that you would really feel good about putting on your skin? Or you could just say, hey, I'm applying lip balm 10 times a day. I'm licking my lips and eating food and I'm ingesting it little by little. Can I make sure that that product is something that I feel good about ingesting? These are really simple ways to make a change that has a very big effect over time on your body. You can also, beyond these personal care products, look at your air quality. Look at those fragrances. It's that fall time when everybody wants to be burning a pumpkin spice candle or getting ready for the holidays with certain candles and air fresheners. Look for versions that are going to have phthalate-free fragrance, that are going to be cleaner burning. Look at maybe even just removing them and using natural materials, boiling orange peels and cinnamon sticks and scenting your home in that way this year, rather than having that constant candle exposure. You want to look at your cleaning products and your laundry. So free and clear is some pretty great marketing. It doesn't mean that a product and that the rest of the ingredients in a product are something that you want on your body or on the clothes that you wear. So make sure you're looking at the full picture of a brand's products. Marketing just, it really gets you sometimes. And you've heard of the term greenwashing, perhaps. There are a lot of companies who use terms like natural, free and clear, which are unregulated, to make their products seem safer and healthier than they are. Your clothing, your furniture, your carpet and paint. Certainly when you are acquiring new furniture, clothing, carpet, things like that, there's going to be an off-gassing period of exposure. So you want to think about that in your air quality. Certainly your water quality, and of course, your food supply. Topics for another session, but they are part of that cumulative exposure. Now, the good news, how quickly do changes take effect in my body? More quickly than you may think. So this wonderful 2016 study done from the University of California looked at 100 women who switched their conventional personal care products to natural versions. And in just 3 days, they experienced between 27 and 45% decrease of some of these concerning ingredients, parabens, phthalates, triclosan, oxybenzone in their urine. So their bodies detoxifying the ingredients they don't need, getting rid of those ingredients they don't need. And that change took place very quickly, which is, it's very reassuring that the changes that you make really do make a difference in what is happening in your body. Now, what we may be talking about next year and 5 years from now, the latest toxic finding in cosmetics are the PFAS chemicals. And a new study from 2021 found lots of PFAS in a lot of the long-wearing waterproof cosmetics. So this is a big issue. We're not sure if these compounds are getting in there through the ingredients in products, if they're coming and leaching from packaging. You know through other sources that PFAS is a persistent and cumulative chemical. PFAS is linked to a wide range of health effects, including breast cancer, testicular and kidney cancers, along with liver disease, decreased fertility, hormone disruption, all kinds of issues that we want to avoid. Again, these are cumulative chemicals. Fortunately, again, California is leading the charge. They signed the PFAS-Free Cosmetics Act into law just about 2 weeks ago, and this will take effect January 1st, 2025, and ban personal care and beauty products containing PFAS from sale in California. So we really need these national laws on a national level, but fortunately, at least we're starting small scale and drawing attention to these issues because they are in our products that we're using. And that future area of research, what really is in our packaging? This goes for personal care, it goes for our food. There are relatively unexplored area of exposure, especially the chemical mixtures that take place in our packaging. So I have links in my resources to the Food Packaging Forum, where you can learn a little bit more about some of the food contact chemicals that are in our packaging and are in our personal care packaging. They influence our gut health, our microbiome, our hormone health, fertility, and cancer formation. And certainly the ingredients in products make a difference in terms of migration of compounds. So the lipophilic and the real kind of creamy, buttery, moisturizing ingredients that you find in beauty products are one of the ingredients that make that migration of compounds happen faster. And some more tips for you to take away. Like I said, ignore those claims. Look at the front of the beauty product as an advertisement, just like you see the front of a cereal box in the cereal aisle as an advertisement. Turn it over. Look for cosmetic seals. We have here the Natural Products Association seal, and this one certifies that at least 95% of a product's ingredients are natural. We have the NSF seal here, and we have USD Organic, which you're obviously familiar with, Made Safe, which is a great one. Made Safe certifies that a product has not been made with ingredients known to cause human health harm. So they're keeping up on current studies. What do we know and which ingredients do we know are causing issues? Made Safe will certify that your product doesn't have that. EcoCert is a European seal. This one certifies that a product is at least 95% natural, with restrictions on synthetic fragrances and dyes, restrictions on parabens. So that's another important one. You want to see that these products have been vetted. You can also find a retailer that you trust. There are a lot of great stores out there. Credo Beauty is a chain. There's one called the Detox Market. There are certain sections of different retailers that will share some of the more natural and vetted products, but you find a retailer that you trust. There are some wonderful local retailers. You might even go to your local health food store and start there. And many of them passionately keep up with ingredient research and development. They sometimes know the most about ingredient standards. And it also bears repeating, don't go for the cheapest product. You're often paying for purity, for small batch production. You're paying for ethical sourcing. So just as you kind of budget a little more for organic produce, think about the long-term effects of buying products with higher quality ingredients and without the potentially toxic additions that you don't want. How can I support change? The goal is to educate and empower, not to cause fear. So yes, you want to sound the alarm, but you also want to share helpful information with anyone that you're passing this information along to. You might want to frame that personal care product choice just like you do your food choices. There are nourishing foods and there are junk foods. It's up to each of us to weigh those options and choose what we feel comfortable with putting in our bodies. And then you can take action to support the Safer Beauty Bill package. There's a link in your resources. You can share that link. And hopefully that will be something that we see passed in the near future. And of course, back to the amazing powers of self-care beyond cosmetics, there's so much more that you can do and that hopefully you already have in your routine beyond those personal care products. These don't involve any kind of product exposure at all in most cases. And there are so many ways that you can still get those wonderful benefits for your immune system and your well-being and your resilience and your daily joy, and just remembering how important self-care is for our health. Now, here's that QR code I spoke about. If you hold your phone up to this, it will take you to a link. You can download or print the information from there. You can send it over to your email if you want to print it out later. But this will also give you, again, some great resources. The logo on the left is Unite for Her, and that is the National Breast and Ovarian nonprofit that I am an advisor for. They have wonderful educational materials. They're just a fantastic organization to support. They provide free complementary therapies to women who are being treated for breast and ovarian cancer. So this program is open to women nationally. If you know someone who fits that category of being newly diagnosed or in treatment, pass this resource along. And then the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners is on the right, and they're just a wonderful resource for healthier ingredient information, healthier cosmetics, and they're one of the sponsors of the Safer Beauty Bill package. And so once you've got that QR code, finally, I have my information here, my email, Instagram, Facebook. You can DM me and ask me questions. If you have any questions about anything you heard tonight, email me or send me a message. And certainly we have some time now for Q&A as well. But just in case you think of something tomorrow and you want to ask, my info is here. And I hope that you have enjoyed this information. I hope it's been empowering, inspiring, and enlightening. And, you know, we will certainly continue to update as this information grows and develops, because it really constantly is. We're living in the moment where all of this is kind of unfolding before our eyes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jolene. So we do have a question in the chat. Let's see. So it says hair relaxers that you refer to, is that keratin treatment?
It can be. Generally, that's not what they call a hair relaxer. Hair relaxers are specific products that women of color often use, but keratin can be, I guess, sort of grouped into that. And certainly you've heard that there are concerns around keratin treatments too. Formaldehyde was found at one point in keratin treatments. At this point, those products should be formaldehyde free because of the attention they were given. But you always want to ask. And I think the salon is a great place to ask questions. Ask what brands, you know, that your stylist uses. You can certainly find salons that will be called, they usually are called organic salons. They're not technically organic because a lot of these products are not organic. But if you find an organic salon, that often means that your stylists are more aware of the risks and concerns on some of these ingredients, and they've chosen more natural hair options. So I always look for an organic salon, a natural salon. You'll notice if you get your hair dyed in one of those salons, it doesn't have that noxious smell that you're used to smelling. So the exposure is going to be less for you as well as for the professional that is styling your hair.
Excellent. Thank you. We have another question. Are you aware of, or do you know, are there blood tests or urine tests we can request of a provider to find out what our exposure is now?
That's a really good question. I've never encountered that personally. I know a lot of these organizations, including the Environmental Working Group, have done that on a cross section of young women. And there's one case study that's linked in the resources, but I actually do not know. And I would be curious to this health provider audience if there is a test that you know, because I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, excellent question. So we have some more time, folks. What questions may you have? feel free to throw them in the question and answer, or you can type them into the chat.
And Penny says, it sounds like I have a lot of labels to check. One good thing to do is just when you run out of a product, before you rebuy, just turn the product over and double check. And it's always a red flag to me if a company does not disclose their ingredients. There are a lot of companies where you might go online and try to search for ingredients and you find that they are not given, or you may also see, contains this type of ingredient. Like they might tell you this contains shea butter, but they don't tell you the full spectrum of ingredients. That to me is a red flag. You want transparency. You want companies who disclose everything. So as you start to dig around and you see maybe that this company is not disclosing the full list of ingredients, that to me, again, is a red flag, and you want to make sure that they are sharing what they should be sharing for you. I'll also share in the chat, the Unite for Her organization that I work with has a kind of pre-recorded 20-minute lesson on some of those ingredients to avoid. And there's also a downloadable guide that gives you, I think it's like 14 pages of product suggestions. So if you're looking for a face lotion or a deodorant, it gives you some of the brands that myself and the staff of Unite for Her have vetted and would recommend. And that can sometimes be a nice jumping off point if you say, wow, I really don't want to use the shampoo anymore. What can I look for? You might find that guide is helpful as you kind of look around at what's in stores by you. So this is the link. It's just uniteforher.org/beauty. And this was created for the patients that are going through the Unite for Her program, but it's available to anyone else, friends and family. You can share it publicly, and just meant to be a resource. We're always adding to this guide, adding new categories. A few years ago, we added makeup for women of color. We added personal care products. So we're always expanding, and we want that to be a robust resource.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm jotting this down so I can check it out.
Sure.
And so it sounds like this can also, all this information can be applied to the baby products that are being used as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, usually during that pregnancy and postpartum period is when women in particular are most aware of what they're putting on their body and putting, perhaps on a new baby. So a lot of those products and brands, I think, have been created around something that is going to be healthier for babies, but you absolutely should be looking. And, fragrance might be one of the number one things that you look to avoid because of those endocrine disrupting effects in many of the phthalates in fragrance.
All righty. Well, does anyone have any last questions, either via the chat or the Q&A? We'd love to get those answered. If not, I guess what we'll do is part company, but we'll offer a few more moments.
Here's that QR code again, in case you want to share that.
And,
I can also send along the guide if you'd like to email that out to the audience.
Yes, please do. Yeah, if you could share the slides and the guide, that'd be excellent, and I can share that tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate everyone coming. And oh, that's actually interesting. Chat. It says interesting that men's products have less chemicals. Is that true?
So it wasn't that men's products have less chemicals, it was that they use fewer products, so their cumulative exposure is less. I want to clear that up. The number of ingredients women are exposed to was larger because they have an average of 12 products that they use each day. Men only use an average of 8. But yeah, so that's what the lower number was.
Sure, that makes sense.
But certainly, some of I've been surprised at some of the common products that men use. Certain shaving ingredients, shaving foams are some of the most toxic. So you really do want to turn those over and check what is in those products.
I absolutely will now.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, again, I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their evening. I want to particularly thank everyone from the UVM Medical Center, the UVM Health Network affiliates, UVM Cancer Center, and UVM in general. I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Take care.